Professor Adi Bongo, a professor of economics at the Lagos Business School, joins us now to discuss the realistic 2024 budget and the MTEF fundamentals are given the state of the Nigerian economy. And he would also look at the loan component of the loan and debt service obligations and those that could impact on the economy and the country as well as alternative means of revenue for the federal government. I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Newsday. Now, what do you make about this particular...
Thank you very much.
The particular news coming out that the federal government will still stick to that budget cycle from January to December. It's looking back at several, at past years, it's not really worked, but they're still sticking to it. Is there any rationale behind this?
Well, I think traditionally and historically, we have run January to December fiscal cycle, which, because of delays in previous administration, seem to have, disrupted that cycle for some years. So, and for organizations, firms, especially in many countries, so the fiscal cycle is January to December. Nigeria is not an isolated economy because we still work, in sync with most economies in the world, which run their budgets, January to December. So it's not inappropriate for us to maintain the same because that helps us also to, be at pace with, our partners, both our lending partners, our trading partners, and our development agency partners as well. So I don't see anything extraordinary about that. I think that should be the way to go. And I think what is important is for government to be consistent in doing that, and of course ensure. We also haven't quite had a full implementation of the budget in the previous years. So what the government should really aim for is to increase budget fungibility and, of course, the implementation rate so that we can go from the lows of 30 or below 50% to the highs of 80%. I think that is when the budget will become meaningful and impactful for the economy.
All right, I would not want to delve into several technicalities, but looking at it closely, my own question to you is this, because we look at Nigeria's debt structure and Nigeria's debt burden and the state of the economy at the moment, and there is a huge gulf between all this. My own question to you is this: how do we probably raise the economy, and how do we ensure that we have enough to be able to fund our budget yearly?
That's a very difficult question and a very difficult position for the government. Thinking about that, what comes really to mind is to be, to make a choice between, the rock and the hard place. So we seem to be trapped between the devil and the deep blue sea when it comes to where to raise the money and how to grow the economy, given that we're already trapped in a very low, suboptimal, productive macroeconomic indicator, social indicator. So everything has quite tanked in recent years. So there is no way that is an easy way. So we are faced with very difficult, if not impossible, choices. And that is why it is kind of, we can't just stay there or in our offices and begin to criticize the government for, going on the borrowing spree or some of the things the government have done. What I would think is that we know what the challenges are in the economy. We've not managed to grow our revenue base. Now, I don't want to talk about diversification of our exports because that's where the challenge has always has been in many in the past, still persisting. That is not, it doesn't admit of any quick turnaround. So it's not something that you can just deal with in a year or even two. So that requires long-term strategic visioning and planning and determination in execution before we can achieve that. But then let's look at are there low-hanging fruits that we can explore? I think the basic one is the same oil export that is the mainstay of our foreign exchange, which has gone down simply because of our inability to meet our quota obligation by OPEC. I think within this week, last week, IMF had to scale down the growth forecast for 2023 for the Nigerian economy by 0.3%, simply because we've not managed to ramp up oil exports. So our export of crude still remains below 1.5 million barrels per day against the budget line of 2 million barrels or thereabout. So that is a huge revenue loss to the government. So some people attribute that to the oil theft and criminality going on in that sector, which government has proven incapable of resolving. So, talking about low-hanging fruits, I think government needs to declare a state of emergency there and go all out. In fact, it should be a war kind of situation to ensure that we eliminate the theft in the oil industry so that we can ramp up our production. So like today, oil is going to $89 per barrel, and estimates, from analysts, the forecast from analysts is that we will be looking at oil above $100, for the better part of next year, if even going up as high as $150. If that happens and we still get trapped in this low production or low volume production export that we are having today, Nigerians will pay heavily for it because we will not benefit from that. It means that we will keep importing crude at a very high, price, international price, which, of course, given I would say the subsidy reduction, not total elimination as it has come to be, Nigerians will be paying a whole lot for that, and that will increase the sufferings and the pain that people are currently, going. So for me, the lowest hanging fruit would be to address the oil theft, to increase our production and our exports. So that's number one for me, what government should have done. The second thing is on refining capacity. That is another place because we are importing refined products simply because we do not have any functional refinery in the country today. So one would think that the government would have addressed that squarely, get some refineries to work. And again, I haven't seen why that has not been addressed. Even in the recently passed PIA, it wasn't quite addressed because the incentive isn't there, to invest in refining. I was thinking that a right-thinking government would have found a way to link oil production, what happens at the upstream, to what happens downstream, linking production to refining, creating the necessary incentive for the oil companies that, the OICs that produce our oil, create incentive for them to also invest in refining. So, if we are able to do that, I think we will see a different market situation. Because the situation that prevails now is comparable to what is going on with the electricity supply industry. In that market, we managed in 2013 to, take the privatized generation and distribution. Meanwhile, the major thing, which is the transmission network, is left at the hands of the government. So, government gives companies or individual gencos the license to generate power based on a take-or-pay power purchase agreement. So, under such a situation, what a typical rational firm does is just to produce. So, it wouldn't be their business whether it is evacuated or not, because that's not their responsibility. Ordinarily, if there were if the production generation of electricity was somehow linked to its transmission, in the sense that the gencos also had some stake in transmission, that would have enabled quick evacuation and a better market situation. Contrary to what currently exists. So we see the same situation prevailing in the oil and gas industry. The reason why refineries haven't worked, because there is no real incentive for any player to be in the refining. And then even internationally, refining is a very complex, low-margin business that takes a whole lot for investors to go there. So so we are not producing enough crude oil to earn sufficient foreign exchange that would have been a buffer for our economy. And the little that we make, we now spend it in importing fuel. So creating a very difficult fiscal situation for the government. That has impoverished us, because this economy is tied to the foreign exchange market. So it's the forest that determines a whole lot of things. So it has impoverished the people. Companies are running at low margins because aggregate demand has gone down. So purchasing power has completely dissipated. So people no longer have money. And then, so government cannot even rely on tax revenue, because there's not much they can do. Despite all they say about reforms. I mean, people no longer have money. So how you can't increase personal income tax by any significant amount. The corporates, complain they're already being overtaxed. So, so those are not options. The options we have are, well, number one is to increase production, by eliminating criminality in the oil and gas sector, and of course, finding a way to domesticate refining capacity in the city. If we can do this, then I don't think we will be in the situation where we are. And then, given the budget that we have, I don't know the contents in detail. So. But all I can tell is that there's no concerted effort towards addressing these lapses. And if that is the case, the situation will not change from what we currently are in.
All right, Professor Bongo, you've actually addressed key issues, but you don't need to be a rocket scientist to be able to understand, to be able to rather diagnose some of these problems and propose solutions. The solutions are out there. Now, the big question is, if we know what to do, if we know our golden goose is in probably oil exploitation and also refining, and we are not sinking in all our energies into ensuring that that particular sector is working at its optimum. My own question to you is this: is it that the government do not understand the problem? Or is it that probably there is no appetite to fix the problem? Because a lot of people would also say, adding to several of your solutions you actually brought out, elimination of waste, cutting down the cost of governance. We know all this, but these are all theories. We're not seeing the implementations of all this.
Yeah, so that's a big one. So there is talking about theory, you can't do without theory anyway. So public choice theory, so you see that political decision makers have a different set of rationality from you and I. So based on economic rationality, we actually do what is in our best interest, what pays us the most. But for politicians, what rewards them most times is completely at variance with what rewards you and I as ordinary economic rational agents. So political rationality is completely different from economic rationality, and politicians and economic managers tend to be somehow motivated or driven by political calculations, and that is why at a point at this time, at a time like this, you saw that I've actually addressed that instead of cutting down the cost of governance, instead of reducing the number of ministries and agencies, we have now increased that. We have more than 50 ministers. Okay, of course they will explain that from a political angle because they have to manage their stakeholders, they have to accommodate all interests. And then you now have the recent situation where the members of the House of Representatives are buying, SUVs importing from abroad, even when we have domestic capacity to produce some of these. And again, they will rationalize it from a political point of view that they need the resources, they need the enablement to really carry out their responsibilities. Now, who are you and I to really question that because they control all the resources? But from where we sit, from where we are, it's easy for us to know what is right. That given where Nigeria is, given the very challenging macroeconomic circumstances that we find ourselves, that the rational thing for anyone to do is to begin to cut down costs, just as every person has done, because this economy has done everybody in. Now, most households cannot have 3 square meals a day. So they have to manage, bootstrapping themselves with the little that they have. Purchasing powers of, like I said earlier, dissipated. But government is not seeing that, and there is always the situation that government, seems to be lazy when it comes to thinking. So they don't they don't really apply themselves to doing the hard thinking. So they go for the easiest way out, by default. And that's why we see government, instead of looking at options that you and I will see as low hanging, but for them, what they will be saying, is the one that will give them the quickest possible relief. And that is why you see them, going for borrowing instead of looking at, for other ways to, generate the same resources or eliminating the need for such resources if they will cut down costs in many ways. So it's a big challenge, So there's always this dilemma. It's a trade-off between political rationality and economic rationality. And I don't know, because that dilemma seems to play out in our own setting here more than in other places.
All right, Professor Bongo, there's always a talk about the fact that not all debt is bad debt, that sometimes debt is not necessarily a negative thing. All right, I beg to differ, but that's what economists do say from time to time, because the government is actually saying that they are setting aside 8.25 trillion naira from the proposed budget or projected budget for debt service. How do we reduce our debt burden in Nigeria? Because a lot of people are afraid that it's our generations down the line that would actually bear the brunt of all the debts we're actually accumulating at the moment.
Well, I wouldn't want to go with those people because, you're only taking a one-track view of that, If you go down the future, of course, productive capacities would have increased. It could also be that using debt, because after all, credit is capital. So when you borrow money, it's actually for investment. So you can borrow to gain access to resources you never had. You can borrow money to activate idle resources within, within your control. So debt is something is quite is a good thing, especially when it is well utilized. And truly, there is no big business in the world that because equity is quite expensive. So the economy runs on credit, runs on debt. So we shouldn't be cowardly not to borrow when we can. So I argue that if Nigeria is still able to raise money from the international capital market, it means that we are deemed to be credit worthy, right? So anybody who gives Nigeria money right now, it means that the person sees Nigeria as an investable asset. Otherwise, nobody will give you money. So think of it. You and I go to the bank to raise, say, ₦1 billion. The first thing the financial institution is going to do is to look at our creditworthiness and our ability to repay. So they will ask us to, to do an inventory of assets and what we do. So when they realize that we are not worth that, nobody's going to give us that. But if Nigeria goes to a lending institution and they are giving her money, so it means that they really put trust in Nigeria and this ability to repay the money. And then if we were in Nigeria, you and I, me as an economic person, as an economist and, applying my economic rationality, if I know that when I go to an institution, they will give me money, I will keep going. I will only stop going if they stop giving me money. Okay, so what you and I need to worry about is what the money that we borrow will be used for. So if we borrow money today because you want to build the necessary infrastructure or build the capital stock that will enable increased productivity in the economy, who will go against that? That's something good in itself because it enhances your future ability to produce goods and services, grow your GDP, create jobs, empower people, and get more than enough to repay the debt and still have something, in the economy. So debt is not entirely bad. By the way, the major lending institutions that we have, the IDAs, International Development Agencies, the World Bank, IMF, were all products of debt, because the time when they were created in 1945, at the end of the Second World War. So my reading of that history is that the United States invested heavily in the war, in the Second World War, by liberating, as it was called, the Allied countries, including Britain and her allies during the Second World War. So the cost of that was huge. And then these economies were totally destroyed at the end of the Second World War. And then left to themselves, there is no way they would have repaid those humongous debts they incurred from the United States in the course of the war. So America knew that, and the only way they could start to recoup their investment, the spend they made in the war, was to rebuild those economies first. And to do that, they had to create these institutions. Don't forget that the World Bank was originally called the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So International Bank for Reconstruction is the reconstruction of war-torn economies. So that's the reason of the World Bank. Its mandate was both reconstruction and development of war-torn Europe. So when these economies had been reconstructed and rebuilt, they now started repaying American debt. And I think the America is better for that. So they had to invest in those economies to, get them to the point where they are able to repay their debts. So if an economy is in a low equilibrium, as Nigeria is currently, and then we can still, raise funds, raise money at the international capital market to fix our economy, fix infrastructure, I'll be a fool to discourage the government not to do that. But where I think the responsibility behooves us is to, put a light on shine the light on the government, on its agents, to ensure that the funds that they raise are judiciously utilized, to create the infrastructure that we badly need, like the roads in Nigeria,
we actually out of time at
security.
The moment. Well, this is a good place to tie it off.
Okay.
I want to say thank you very much for joining us here, Professor Adi Bongo, for shedding more light on the projected government expenditure for 2024.